Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. And just at the beginning of the broadcast, we're going to tell it 4 men and a baby. Why not? Because we have Kenzo in the house. And Kenzo, what little vocabulary you have? Say hello, Kenzo.
Say hi.
There you go, Kenzo. All right, well, there's Kenzo. He's for all you people that are looking for a little baby, and he'll be there. You go. Give it to us, Kenzo. He'll make everybody look like darlings in this broadcast. All right, Kenzo, welcome back anyhow. All right. Well, guys, we're back doing this all over again, and we're going to talk about some quarterbacks as we recap week number 2. And that being, we're going to start out with Mac Jones, who to me, it looks like a game manager. I'm going to go over some statistics here because I think stats are a part of what we're going to do, but a good game manager, I might add. Mac Jones is 51 of 69, 73.9%. 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 467 yards. And his team is 1-1. Well, you know what? He's a New England guy, Steve Balestrieri. So give us your take on Mac Jones.
Yeah, I think he's shown a ton of poise. The players, especially the veterans, already respect him. But, you know, the coaching staff has definitely been very, very conservative with their play calling. If you watch the Patriots games, I've watched both of them. And, you know, everything is screen passes, very short crossers, or just quick outs. You know, they're trying to keep things simple. They don't want them turning the ball over. That being said, there's been some plays down the field that, you know, he's checked down from. Josh McDaniels was talking about that this afternoon. There has been some stuff there, but they definitely need to open it up a little bit. And the caution point of that is exactly, if you watch the game on Sunday, you know, with Zach Wilson, whose coaches kind of opened up the playbook a little too much for him. That's the cautionary tale what the Patriots are trying to avoid with, and I'm sure we'll get into him in just a moment. But overall, I think Jones has played very well. He's played within himself. He hasn't done anything spectacular, but at the same time, he hasn't made many mistakes. He's made some rookie mistakes.
All right, Mel, what's your take on Mac Jones?
Yeah, I liked him coming out of college, so it doesn't surprise me what he's doing. And, you know, with that defense, this is what you want him to do. When you have a good defense, you just want him to you know, matriculate the ball down the field, not make any mistakes, have long drives, punch it in. You know, I like the little running back from Alabama. He had a great run in there as well. That helps when you have a good running game with a young quarterback to have a good, strong running game. That helps out tremendously. He hasn't shown. I mean, he's not doing anything that I didn't think he was capable of doing. He's a very intelligent guy. You know, you see why Cam didn't make the team. You see why they ended up cutting Cam, because there would have been, you know, I think guys in the locker room knew that and you know, I wasn't in the camp. I never saw anything in camp, but I look back at what Cam did last year. I look at Cam in the previous years. And I just, you know, I listened to an interview that Cam did with his dad, and he was talking about some of the things that he had to do that he's never done before, which is identify the mic. You know, I've been out of the game for a long time. I've been watching this game for a long time. Most quarterbacks identify the mic. They want to know who the mic is. I mean, I know, you know, back when I was playing, they might have the center do it, and then the quarterback would point as well. But now it's always been, if you look at the Peyton Mannings and the Drew Breeses, the Tom Brady's and the Russell Wilsons, I mean, you see them all identifying the mic. He said that's something he's never had to do. Well, for me, that tells me that they probably had to pare down that offense a little bit for Cam to be able to grasp it. So he didn't have the full playbook. Josh McDaniels didn't have his full playbook at his disposal when Cam was in there. So this kid's very smart. Cam has said it. Everybody else has said it. He's picked up the playbook. And now Josh McDaniels is able to do everything that he was able to do with Tom Brady. He's able to do with this kid. And Tom didn't throw the ball down the field. You know, they threw a lot of things from sideline to sideline, which is just like a long handoff. You're just trying to get the ball out in space, try to get those defensive linemen running sideways, trying to get them moving laterally. You want to use all 53 yards of the field and 100 yards, 53 yards of the width and 100 yards of the length of the field. You want to make them defend the entire field. And I think Mac Jones gives them the best. Obviously they thought the same thing, but I think Mac Jones does a very good job of doing exactly what it is that Josh McDaniels wants to do and wants him to do.
That's a good point, Mel, because, looking at this offense, I've been watching the Patriots since they played at Fenway Park. This resembles a lot, the play calling resembles a lot of Brady's first year, 2001, when Charlie Weiss was running the offense. They got Brady that comfort level by starting off with a ton of screens, those little short crossers, the quick outs. I mean, and they relied on the running game. At that time, they had Antoine Smith, but it's a lot of the same principles that they're running right now.
And what does that do? It builds the quarterback's confidence. You look at look what's going on with the kid over there in the Jets. His confidence is a little bit shot. You go out there and throw, they played them last week. You go out there and throw 4 picks in a row, your confidence is a little shot. Well, Mac Jones, they're building him up, so his confidence is slowly and continuing to build. And all it's going to do is continue to build throughout the season. And later on in the year, when they're fighting for one of those playoff spots, I think it'll show and it will help.
Okay, Joe, what do you think?
I think Mac Jones has a lot that he's keeping close to the vest with their play calling, not asking him to do a lot. But based on his college production, supporting Devonta Smith as he won the Heisman as a wide receiver, he has a lot of throws that, in his tool belt. And he's got a lot of different things. And when you're playing at Alabama, you're basically playing as close to the pros as you could play in college. And there are so many players from Alabama on New England's roster. I don't know if Nick Saban and Bill Belichick are like buddies or they like hang out in the offseason or something, but Belichick always picks up those guys from Alabama and they're very well coached. So I think that they might be easing him in. They've got a bunch of running backs. They've got running backs that can catch the short passes running through the air, but a really good defense. I mean, if you looked at most of their acquisitions in the offseason, they were picking up defensive players, picked up a lot of defensive players, and they're going to go back to even back when Brady tore his ACL and they still went 11-5. So I think there's a lot left you're going to see from Mac Jones as he develops, but they're not pushing him to go beyond his means. And I'm sure just running out onto an NFL field as a rookie, which Mel would know more about than me, must be ridiculous. And I know I was smiling my head off the last week that we were on here and I wasn't even playing football. I was just talking to people that know a lot about football. So he's got jitters, I'm sure.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say to this is we'll go back to what you said, Mel. Okay, spread the field out. So in baseball, object of the game is put bat on ball. Okay, when you put bat on ball, then generally you score runs. In fact, that is the way you score runs, unless you go ahead and walk and have a few wild pitches. Okay, and so we'll talk about what Mel just said. Okay, use the field as wide as it is, as long as it is, and as a result, you're stretching things out. You do that with a combination of a good defense, and what do you have? A recipe for success. So you have a good defense, use the length and the width, and then isn't that what they usually use in geography anyways? Length times width, and I'm the last person to be talking about math because I was awful at it anyways. But you're able to generate offense however you end up doing it. So yeah, Mel, I'm with you all the way, okay? If you have to go out there and throw those passes out to get yards, being a Lions guy, although you couldn't tell with my Rams hat because I'm drinking the Matt Stafford Kool-Aid, okay? But it always made me wonder that if Barry Sanders ever got in the passing game, oh my goodness. So we'll let people really let their imagination run wild here. But I'm with you all the way, Mel. Manage the game. And I remember Mark Sanchez and Rex Ryan winning playoff games because just don't commit turnovers, manage the football game, and then get through that learning curve. And as a result, you become better as time. So you guys I'm with you on all counts. And Mel, yes, I like it when you have analogies about length and width, but I don't like to brag about my geometry grades back in high school because they're awful. All right, so since Mel Farr does a really good job with segues. We're going to transition over to Zach Wilson. Okay, this is what we did before. Mel Farr, okay, goes out there and segues everything in. He's picking up where he left off. So with that said, we'll talk about Zach Wilson. 4 interceptions against the Patriots. He's had 5 all season against 2 touchdowns, 468 yards, 56.1% of his passes. And here's the key number. All year with Brigham Young University, he had 5 so far in the NFL. What can I tell you? All right, Mel, floor's yours.
Well, I mean, he's going against a professor. So, I mean, obviously Bill Belichick was going to do everything he possibly could to make the kid look bad and to make the New York Jets second guess their decision as far as drafting him when they did. Because look where they got Mac Jones at, and obviously, Mac Jones fared a lot better in that contest than Wilson. What I will say is it's tough. It's going to be tough on his psyche. It's going to be tough on his confidence. Obviously, going forward, I feel bad for him. I feel bad for the head coach that that they've gone to a situation that they're in. I mean, obviously, we always know that the best players end up with the worst teams because they have. The worst teams have the higher draft pick. I was never really sold on this kid. I saw him play one time. I think it was Coastal Carolina. I think late at night or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. It might have been a makeup game or something. I have a real problem with these guys that just come from nowhere, and all of a sudden we try to make them into something that maybe they really are not. Like Jared Goff, who just appeared from out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, he became the #1 draft pick when I was taking that particular draft. There's a lot of guys that they just pull from whatever and just all of a sudden anoint them as this. And for me, it serves the Jets right that this would happen to him. Now, it's only the second game, so he has a lot of time here. And I hope for the coach's sake, because he is from Michigan. I hope that they're able to get this thing turned around. And because those 2 guys are joined at the hip, hopefully the quarterback will get things, get his confidence back, and hopefully they'll be able to do some good things over there, because I do wish the best for Saleh over there, because and I think the Lions should have got him, but I wish him the best. I don't want to see anything bad happen to him, like he get fired. But he's in an unfortunate situation there with the Jets. But
that's funny. I was hoping that Robert Saleh would be with the Lions, being a Michigan boy too. Along with Dan Campbell, reporting on Dan. Another show.
They had a great story on him. I don't know if you saw the story that came on him and why he decided to get into coaching. He was actually in the financial world, and his brother was in the towers, one of the towers of 9/11. 9/11 changed his life. 9/11 is the reason why he decided to get into coaching.
Right.
He went up to his high school coach at Dearborn Fordson. Talked to his high school coach, who got a hold of somebody at Michigan State, who got him in touch with Coach Williams. I think it was Bobby Williams. I think it was,
Right.
who was a coach there, and said, "Hey, you'd be doing me a great service if you would hire me as a GA." So at 23 years old, he became a graduate assistant, and obviously the rest is history. But his brother was in the tower, and that's the reason why he decided to go to coach. He called him after once they found out he was okay, because he was in the tower. Once they found that he was okay, he called his brother crying, and he told him, "Man, I can't do this anymore." He looked up to his brother. His brother was the one that would wake him up in the middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning, making sure he would eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches so he could get fattened up and stuff like that to keep his weight while he's playing football. So it's a great story. He's a great guy. I hope it has a happy ending. The Jets is just one of those franchises, kind of like our Lions, that it's one of those it's a bad situation, unfortunately, and I don't know if they got things straightened out over there yet.
Yeah, the only difference between the Jets and the Lions is the Jets have been to a Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl, but other than that, it certainly hasn't been very good. All right, Joe, what do you think about this?
Definitely a tale of 2 quarterbacks that couldn't be more opposite in Zach Wilson and Mac Jones. Zach Wilson, he's got to get out there. He's got to make plays. They need him to be a difference maker. The Patriots don't really need Mac Jones to be a difference maker to be winning games. And also the media, being a rookie quarterback in New York on a team that's losing, not really a recipe for the psyche, like you guys were saying before, for quarterback. Coming out and throwing in 4 picks in a game kind of made me think of Nathan Peterman. And, if they hadn't drafted him second overall and you go out and you throw 4 picks in your second start, like people would be like, should he be benched right now? But they're really invested in him on a capital N. So, you were talking about Robert Saleh, Mel, and that was a really good story. I'm glad that you let me know about that. But he's a great defensive mind. I mean, he was doing a good job in San Francisco, and he's a good head coach at Canada because he did well as a defensive coordinator. And I really hope that they start making some steps forward with the Jets. But, the amount of talent on the Jets is so much different than the Patriots, for instance, or even from Jacksonville, probably more similar to Jacksonville, that they need those picks to step up right now. It's a show up. Yeah, you're 20, 21, 22, doesn't matter. We need you to carry this team and don't mess up. And that's probably why they had to open up the playbook more, like Steve was saying. So that's my take on Zach Wilson.
All right, Steve, go ahead.
Well, coming out in the draft, one of the knocks on Zach Wilson was he wouldn't take, what was in front of him. He'd always try to push the ball down the field and make a big play. And that's what made him so successful at BYU. But as we all know in the NFL, you can't always get away with that. The great ones can get away with it a lot of times, but they pick and choose when they do that. And on Sunday, I mean, his first interception, they tried to push the ball, and it was they had just gained, I think it was 9 yards on first down. So there wasn't a big push right there. They were in front of the chains, and he tried to throw a deep ball down the middle to Corey Davis. There was 3 blue jerseys all around him. And, when you look at that play, it's like that you're trying to fit it in a very, very tight window when you don't really have to. JC Jackson got a hand on it. The ball bounced up in the air. And as you know, when there's a bunch of defenders around the ball that bounces up in the air, it invariably gets picked. On his second throw, it was the same thing. They had a check down receiver that was wide open. There was nobody around him. It was an easy 6-7 yard gain. And he tried to force it down the field to Corey Davis again. And if the throw was a little bit high, granted, Davis did get his hands on it, but it bounced off his hands. He got picked off again. And again, I think it goes back to the coaching. You have to put it in these young quarterbacks' mind. This is a different game at the NFL level. And especially for somebody who played at BYU, Mel was talking earlier about, Zach Wilson playing in Alabama, which is, they're in big games all year long. They played in the national championship game. So they're playing against the top level of college football. At BYU, not so much. So I think it's a coaching thing. I mean, I think this kid, he's very mobile. He has a tremendous arm. It's just, they need to temper that a bit. You need to pull him in and say, look, there's nothing wrong with, on first down, getting 6 or 7 yards. Because on that second pick, they had just gained 13 yards on first down. So, they had a 1st and 10. There's nothing wrong with getting 6 and 7. Those plays will keep the chains moving. And I think when you let some of these young guys that, especially that New York media, he's been hearing it since he's been drafted. He's supposed to be the next guy. And, he says he's tuned it all up, but they hear it. They read it, and he's feeling like he has to make a big play on every down. That's just a recipe for disaster. I think, I'm not a Jets fan by any stretch of the imagination, being a Patriots guy, but, I just hate seeing them ruin a guy's confidence like they did with the last quarterback that was there.
Yeah, well, I'll get to him in a moment. So, yeah, I had an opportunity to see Zach Wilson play at the Boca Raton Bowl, shredding up the University of Central Florida, and he put on a clinic there. And, I've seen some great individual efforts over the years, but this was pretty good watching him blow out Central Florida. Not that I'm a USF Bulls guy and didn't mind it one bit, we'll have a little I-4 rivalry in there as well. But yeah, looking at his numbers thus far, and I want to reiterate on those numbers, 4 interceptions, as you say, against the professor, New England and Bill Belichick, and 5 for the season and 2 touchdowns. You're right. He's definitely going to have a lot to deal with that New York media. And, it's up to him to do the best he can to shield it to the best he can. Because how many quarterbacks that the Jets drafted over the years that got ruined because either they had bad coaching, number one, or they couldn't handle the stage that's in front of them, and they're in the Big Apple. So let's transition to a guy that isn't quite on as big of a stage, and it's working with Urban Meyer, the man who's preaching patience to the old folks in Jacksonville. And they, of course, have been preaching patience for a lot of years with the coaching. And I'm going to talk about Trevor Lawrence. In his first 2 games in the NFL, 4 touchdowns against 5 interceptions, 42 of 84, 50% completion, 450 yards. So Trevor Lawrence, you know what? We all knew you weren't going to win as much in Jacksonville, but he is the number 1 pick overall, just like Zach Wilson being number 2 and Mac Jones being 15. So Steve, why don't you let's lead off with you on Trevor Lawrence.
Well, I think he's incredible. I think he has incredible talent. I just think a lot of what's happening with him is, there's a reason why he was the number 1 pick, and that's a team that's not ready for prime time. I think Urban Meyer will get him figured out, and they'll find a happy medium. But I just think that's not a good football team. I mean, I don't think the Jets are either at this point, but I just don't think Jacksonville is. It's tough for a number 1 pick to come in on day 1 and take a team that went 1-15 and expect him to perform miracles in the first 2 games. I just think that's a bad recipe. That's why I was kind of hoping. I said this with Mac Jones. I said the same thing with Trevor Lawrence. You had a veteran quarterback there. Let the kids sit for the first few games and soak it all in and see how the speed of the game in the actual regular season games go before you throw them in there in the deep end of the pool. Now, the Patriots have been very, very conservative, but when you're playing behind as much as Jacksonville is and will be this year, it's going to be tough.
Okay, Mel, where do you want to go with this one?
Yeah, it's a tough situation there. Like Steve said, when you're the number 1 draft pick and you go to a particular franchise, there's a reason why that franchise has the number 1 pick, and obviously it's because they like a lot of talent. And I think people thought because Urban Meyer was going to go there that he was going to have the similar success in his first year that he did when he went to Ohio State, after Ohio State stumbled a little bit. And then Urban went there and they went undefeated that particular year, but they weren't able to compete in the national championship because they were on probation. The NFL is a whole different animal. I wouldn't be surprised if, I know Urban has refuted it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he left the NFL and went to USC and took the USC job. I wouldn't surprise me if he did that. Because maybe that's a little bit more of his element. I know he says he doesn't really particularly care for recruiting, but when you're recruiting and you have that SC on your chest, it's a lot easier to get players there. And your Urban Meyer, it's a lot easier to get players there than it is to try to get players to come play in Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence is, unfortunately, you know how good he is because you look at what Clemson's doing right now. Clemson's struggling offensively right now because they don't have the guy at that position. For the last 3 years, Clemson has had the guy at that position, and that's why they were competing the way that they competed. Now he's gone. Now you look at Clemson right now; they keep falling in the polls. They lost their opening game. Offense was not very good the first game when they played the University of Georgia. Their second game, they were okay. Third game last week against Georgia Tech, struggled a little bit. That's not. Last year they beat them like 73-6 or something like that. So you know how good. And I don't think in the second half, I think he came out in warmups. So, but you know how good he is because you see how that team is struggling. So we know he's a good quarterback. It's just going to take him time to get accustomed to the NFL game. It's going to take time for Urban Meyer and the coaches to figure out what it is that he does well. I can't remember the name of the offensive coordinator there, but I'm not real impressed with him. Yeah, and not really. Yeah. I mean, he's been around. He's just a retread. He's been around. So it's an unfortunate situation for him. He's going to learn. Just like Peyton Manning did. I mean, they all learned under fire. Troy Aikman the same way, and they all turned out pretty well. I mean, they had Hall of Fame careers. So he's just going to have to take his lumps. And he's going to take it on the chin. He's a big, strong, tough kid, tough-minded, extremely talented. So I'm pretty sure they'll be able to get this thing turned around, and he'll do well.
Yeah, I wonder about whether he would go to USC. If I were a betting man, I'd say he's going to stay in Jacksonville, stick it out, because he's done everything he can at the college level. But I'm sure it's something that's intriguing for him. But
Nick Saban did everything at the college level too, and he went back.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, we'll see where he goes. I mean, Urban Meyer, do you really take him at face value for what he's going to do? 1 minute he's going to do.
I mean, he's going to have a medical probably before the end of the year. He's probably. I mean, I'm not wishing anything bad on the guy, but he's probably the way they're playing. He's going to have a medical situation.
Yeah, hey, listen, there's no debating that one. That's for sure. And I've been to the Jacksonville facilities plenty. He'll probably have the way they build these NFL stadiums. They'll have one there. But no, hey, listen, Mel, you're throwing a lot of interesting fodder out there, and this is more fuel for our broadcast for sure. So, if he's preaching for patience with Jacksonville in 2 weeks, we'll see where this narrative goes in about 4 or 5 weeks when things continue to get more and more difficult. What doesn't help his cause, though, as Travis Etienne, the running back, got hurt earlier, and you took a key running back away. All right, Joe, now that you're caught up in all of this, what's your take on Trevor Lawrence?
Well, I want to touch on that part about Urban Meyer going to Ohio State and turning him around. Well, they funnel in 5-star recruits. It doesn't matter. They're Ohio State. They're pulling in 5-star recruits. So when he showed up there, the level of talent on his roster was able for him to mold it with his coaching to help them succeed. He came into Jacksonville with a depleted roster, a roster that did very well, very poorly last year. So now we bring in Trevor Lawrence. Everybody had known he was going to be the first pick. And also, when you think about him, when he came into college, he also turned things around right away as a freshman. So you have a lot of things building up where you think, oh, okay, well, Trevor Lawrence is going to come. He's going to do everything. And I think you should uncouple his stat line from 2 weeks from first and second weeks. Because in the first week, he had 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He threw for over 300 yards. He had 50 attempts. Clearly, he was really trying to get after it. He was pushing balls into tight areas. That's why he was having interceptions. But he was also hitting on that. So he was like 50-50 on tight balls. He had 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's kind of was fearless in that game. Obviously, he was playing Houston that have their own roster worries. But in that second game against Denver, their defense is stepping up. They've got Von Miller back this year that they didn't have before. So he throws the 2 interceptions versus the 1 touchdown, only 118 yards passing. That's also a very not good line. But I don't think that anybody's really second guessing that he was the right choice or that he shouldn't have had that draft capital, that first overall pick. Also, keep in mind that Chenault hurt his shoulder, so he left the game. So he was filling that kind of ETN gadget role. Now he's going away. The offensive options there are not doing well. They haven't been able to get James Robinson going. All the pressure is on the passing game. They traded Schobert, their middle linebacker. So they're going to have growing pains for sure. And I don't know that you can uncouple going out there if you're Trevor Lawrence and just trying to like totally dominate, as opposed to just like stepping back and being like, okay, I want to be adequate. I want to play within myself. I mean, he's a baller. That's not in his game.
All right, there's only 2 things I want to mention about this before we go on to some football games. Number 1, Urban Meyer. Mel, you're right, and everybody's right here. You walk into a situation, no talent. That's not what he's accustomed to doing. Number 2, the one thing Trevor Lawrence has going for him that Zach Wilson doesn't have going for him is he's in a small media market, so he won't get carved up as bad. And I know the Jacksonville media market well because I've certainly worked in it the last few years. So I got news for you. Zach Wilson's going to have 9 million people by his questioning him, and whereas Trevor Lawrence, it won't be as bad. So, it's much less severe in Jacksonville than it is in New York. So we'll leave it on that note. But yeah, Urban, you don't have the talent here that you had anywhere else. So therefore, you better make sure that you have a lot of Maalox and you better have a lot of Tylenol, because it's going to be painful for a while, and you'll keep your ego in check. But he knows it. Why do you think Sean Khan paying a boatload of money? Because it's not like he walked into a situation that was that good. If you're going to have the heartache, you better make sure you have the checkbook to go with it. So with that said, let's recap a few games from last week, and we'll talk about 2 more. And we've been dancing around this one, so we'll talk about the Carolina Panthers 26, New Orleans Saints 7. Sam Darnold is saying, "Thank you, Carolina, for rescuing me from New York, because I have Carolina on my mind." Now, obviously, in this game, Darnold throws 2 touchdowns, and Jameis Winston throws for 111 yards and 2 interceptions and no touchdowns. So I'm going to ask you guys each one question apiece, okay? Which is a more intriguing storyline, Joe? Sam Darnold getting 2 touchdowns or Jameis Winston getting 2 interceptions?
I think it's Jameis Winston, because he just came off that multi-touchdown, huge game, high efficiency. Wow, Jameis Winston's changing. He's really turned over a new leaf in New Orleans. Then they get practically blown out. He throws more interceptions. I think that I was excited for Jameis Winston. I think that there's still that potential, but maybe it is that the Panthers defense is just for real this year.
All right, so repeat what you said. Of the 2 that I asked you, okay, which one stands out to you?
Jameis Winston.
Okay, Mel, same question.
Yeah, Jameis Winston. After what he did the week before, and it was kind of the tale of 2 weeks. I mean, it's just it's like, is this the same guy, or is this the guy from Tampa Bay? The guy that they didn't want to re-sign. It was very, very surprising to me that that they played that poorly. That he played that poorly, actually, especially after the Cowboys aren't a bad team. I'm sorry, they didn't play the Cowboys. Who did they play their first week? They played Green Bay. Green Bay's, their defense is a little suspect too, but nonetheless. So I think that was the one that was most surprising to me, is Jameis Winston.
Okay, Steve.
Yeah, I go with Winston as well, because I watched a little bit of the game on Game Pass yesterday, and his protection, I thought, was horrible in this game. And I thought it held up pretty well against the Packers. And again, maybe the Packers defense is suspect. Maybe Carolina's is really, really good. But in that game, I saw a lot of warts for that offensive line. And I think they need to get that straightened out, because it's tough for a quarterback when they're under constant pressure like that. But to me, I think it's Winston.
Yeah, I'll say this about Jameis Winston. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which one's going to show up? Is it the Tampa version, okay, that he threw 30 interceptions, or the one that sat a year and was working under Sean Payton? I agree there, but you know what? I will say this on that note, okay? I am so happy for Sam Darnold that he left New York and that he's got a fresh start in North Carolina with Charlotte. And I'll tell you, if he continues to perform very adequately with Matt Rule and Joe Brady calling the shots, I got news for you. Sam Darnold will be the happiest man on the planet. And I'm really happy for Sam that he got out of New York and went to Charlotte. And unfortunately for Zach Wilson, okay, Sam Darnold saying, thanks for taking my job. Now I can actually feel a little bit better here in North Carolina. All right, let's move on to the next football game. And this one's got Mel's name written all over it. When I mentioned the word availability, okay, Mel Farr Jr. knows exactly where I'm going with this one. The Rams 27, Indianapolis 24. Carson Wentz gets 2 sprained ankles. My goodness, I tell you, is this an audio or visual replay about Carson Wentz out in Philadelphia, back in Indianapolis. He's already seen the trainer's table a few times. So since the word availability is the first word that popped into my mind, I'm going to be directing this question toward Mr. Mel Farr Jr. about availability / Carson Wentz. Take it away, Mel.
He hasn't been available much in the last number of years. That's been one of the biggest knocks against him. At some point in time, you just got to kind of figure out, what kind of body that you have, and then you have to adapt your game to that. And as opposed to taking off and running quite a bit, sometimes you just need to either just take a sack, fall down, take a sack, or just throw the ball away. I know his thing is he wants to go out there and he wants to try to do everything he possibly can for his team. But the best thing that he can do for his team is to make sure that he stays available for his team. And him putting himself in harm's way all the time, having two sprained ankles and, potentially missing a number of weeks, that doesn't help the team. That they felt, a lot of people picked the Colts to win that division. They should win that division. And they need Carson Wentz in order to do that. They need Carson Wentz from him getting hurt the year they won the Super Bowl, and Nick Foles ended up winning the Super Bowl. But they need that Carson Wentz, that guy who a lot of people thought was having an MVP type of a year. So he's got to figure some things out. He's got to be a lot smarter, and so that he can stay available, because that's your number one quality. That's the best quality that you have is availability, and not being available, and that hurts the team. So hopefully he gets some things figured out, and hopefully it's not too bad. The injuries are not too bad, and he'll be able to, he won't miss too much time.
All right, I'm going to throw a fantasy curveball at Joe Packhem. All right, if you're a fantasy person, what is your take on Carson Wentz?
3 years ago, I got rid of him on all my teams, and I've been muted to anyone saying Carson Wentz for the past multiple years.
Okay. Is that all you've got to say on it?
Yeah, don't leave it. Just
Okay.
earmuffs. He's not in the NFL anymore. You don't want him on your roster. Don't give in. We talked about this in the last episode.
We're talking about it in this episode too, which is why I brought the availability up. Only we're giving you a fantasy perspective on a guy who's Humpty Dumpty.
So for me in fantasy, I play in many leagues. Most of them are dynasty, and I have a number of players that I really like, and I try to acquire those players where I can. A lot of times because I think they're valued more than I value them more than what other people think. Or I try to sell all these players that other people want that I think are going to be bad. So you would have wanted to sell Carson Wentz when his stock was up a couple years ago, because it's been going down. It came up a little bit when he got traded to Indianapolis. If you still had him, you could have sold high then. But I don't know. I do think of it kind of in terms of like sell high, buy low. And he's not one of those players. It's not like I go out there and why don't I try to get all these different players and see if it works? No, it's like you have these players and you want them on your teams, and you really want to just avoid tricky situations, and you want to avoid places where you just want to maximize your points, and you want the players that you trust. You want the biggest bang. That's how I do it. And Carson Wentz has not been on my radar. And if anybody tries to trade him to me, I don't want him, and I would never draft him. So
works for me. All right, Steve, let's bring it back to reality now that we choked up Joe.
Yeah, we would, like he mentioned, we talked about Wentz last week. The knock on him is he's just not, he's made out of glass. And, if you're the coaching staff there, again, it comes down to coaching. You have to drill into his head, we don't need you making a big play in September. We need you to be available for us in November and December. And, he's very fragile. I mean, it seems like he's hurt all the time. And, I'd be lying if I told you I was surprised by this.
Well, all I'll say is I'm glad that Matthew Stafford beat the Indianapolis Colts, number one. And number two, the team that's hoping that he can stay healthy and be productive, by the way, is the Philadelphia Eagles, because I think a lot of those picks that they traded were conditional picks as well. So the Eagles are hoping that Carson Wentz stays enough to improve their draft capital, and that's what we've got to say. So, all right, now let's talk about a game that obviously could go down as one of the best ones of the week. The Baltimore Ravens got the monkey or gorilla off their back by beating the Kansas City Chiefs 36-35. Lamar Jackson against Patrick Mahomes. We know full well that John Harbaugh was playing psychology with Lamar. You want to go for it? What do you expect a kid to say anyways? But yeah, why not? So, all right. So now that we tripped up Joe before, okay, let's bring him back down to earth here with the Chiefs and the Ravens. What's your take on that football game?
First, the NFL has done an excellent job with scheduling. All the primetime games have been excellent. They're really close. They're very exciting. And this one was no exception. The Chiefs and the Ravens, it was an excellent game. And you could definitely see it in Lamar in his runs. When he's at the beginning of the game, he's like, oh yeah, I'll run out of bounds. I'll try to get it. And then he's like, oh, I got this chance. I'm going to beat Patrick Mahomes. He's got a huge target on his back. I'm going to stay in. I want those extra yards. And he looked great in the passing game. Hollywood Brown is someone like in fantasy that I had been totally out on, and I was wrong. He's looking really good. He's very fast. He's getting open. He's making plays. Sammy Watkins is helping. Of course, I think that it's pretty exciting, and I hope to see them continue on. I do like the Ravens this year, and they have like the most injuries on their roster of any team in the NFL right now, like over 10 players on the IR. So and with all the running back woes, you should expect high output from Lamar. He's going to be rushing a lot. He's going to be passing a lot. He's going to be the number one wide receiver, or the number one running back, number one quarterback. So he's going to be combining all those stats. And I think it does make me think about what we talked about with Carson Wentz. He's blowing it up first couple weeks, but is he going to be available if he has to keep taking everything on his back, rushing and passing? But that game was really exciting. That was a great game to watch.
Okay, Mel.
Yeah, I mean that scene with John Harbaugh asking Lamar if he wanted to go for it, and that kind of reminded me of the replacements with Gene Hackman, Keanu Reeves, and Falco. Winners want the ball. At the end, the winners want the ball, and I think he was just trying to figure out if Lamar wanted the ball in that particular situation, and Lamar's like, hell yeah, I want the ball. So it was a great game. They got that monkey off their back. They're finally, he was finally able to beat Kansas City. That's their identity. You talk about Lamar Jackson and staying healthy. I mean, that's who they are. That's what they do. They run the football, and Lamar is a part of that. I think Lamar is smart enough. He has taken some big hits, but he's smart enough not to. I think he's shown that he's durable. They've been doing this for a while, so I think he's shown that he's able to absorb this kind of contact, even though he has that slight build. I mean, Carson Wentz is a much bigger man, and he can't take any punishment. So this is who they are. This is what they built their team around, running the football this way with his attributes, with his assets, because you want to utilize all of Lamar's tools. Now, you may not get 15 years of this from Lamar Jackson, but the time that you have him, that window, that 10-year window, or however long it is, you want to maximize that time that you have him. That's what John Harbaugh is doing. When you get one of these kind of quarterbacks, you can't say, well, hey, let's make him a drop back passer, because that's not who he is. He's not truly a typical prototypical drop back passer. Now, can he drop back and throw some passes? Yes, he can. Does he miss a few? Yes, he does. He had an opportunity. I think they had Hollywood Brown on one wide open, and he overshot him. That's going to happen. But you look at what they did. They turned the ball over. What they turned? I think Lamar threw 2 interceptions, and they fumbled once or he fumbled twice, and whatever. They turned the ball over quite a bit. Typically, when you turn the ball over as much as Baltimore did, you're going to lose the game. So it tells you what kind of defense they have, and they're playing to their strengths. We want to run the football, control the time of possession, limit the amount of time that the opposing quarterback or the opposing offense limit their time on the field. And when we have the ball, we want to make sure that we're able to punch it in, or if not, we're just going to play the field position game. So it was a great game, very exciting, and it was nice to see Lamar get that monkey off his back and be able to beat Kansas City.
Yeah, it's only a typical that it happens in the Beltway, right? Then this replacements movie supposedly take place in Washington. Now you have this one in Baltimore. And if anybody knows anything about getting monkeys off their back, I remember when the Detroit Pistons finally conquered the Boston Celtics, and that wasn't a monkey on our back, that was a gorilla. So with that said, Mr. Boston, okay, why don't you go ahead and take over from me? I'm going to hand this one off to you. And where do you want to go with this Kansas City ball?
Well, I love the mention of the replacements and Gene Hackman. I want the ball. Yeah, well, he gave it to him, and that was a fantastic football game. And, it kept you on the edge of your seat right to the very end. I just thought both teams laid it all out there. It didn't look like a early September game. It looked like a late November, early December type of football game out there. I mean, it was pretty intense. That when the Ravens run the ball like that and Lamar's going like that, they're very, very hard to stop, because if you're a defense, you have to respect that run. And then, they throw the ball right over your head. And something to be said for, like you guys were mentioning earlier, early in the game, he's running out of bounds. And then he was like, the heck with this. That stiff arm he gave Sorensen right near the sideline, I was like, he's pumped up. So I just thought it was a great football game. I thought that the Ravens acquitted themselves very well, because early in the game, it didn't look good for them. I mean, just a couple of minutes in, you're like, they've never beaten, with Lamar, they've never beaten Kansas City. And now, they're down. So, but credit to them and Harbaugh. I mean, they hung tough, and, they smashed Kansas City right in the mouth, and they came away with the win. I thought, both teams played really well, but I really liked the way Jackson played.
I just love Jackson's overall demeanor anyways. The guy's going to get paid over $45 million. The Ravens take care of their players, number one. And number two, you wouldn't worry about the win. We didn't win the Super Bowl. We just won a football game. I'm just focusing next on Detroit. So for the Lions, all I can tell you, the Lions are going to look like a bunch of sloppy Joes after Lamar go ahead and sticks that sauce in that hamburger, and they're going to run rush on Detroit. We're not getting into that one tonight. All I know is in Lamar, we trust on in Baltimore. He'll get paid. And I just love his level-headed demeanor. So I'll get paid whenever I get paid. Right now, my focus is on winning. He has the most unselfish, even-keeled demeanor on the planet. And how do you not root for a guy like Lamar Jackson? How do you not? And for whatever it's worth, when I had physical therapy in Fort Lauderdale, I think I did bump into his uncle one time in the same facility. We talked a little bit about Lamar, but nevertheless, you do root for him. And all I can tell you, folks back home in Detroit, good luck. The Ravens are going to have a field day against them, but we'll talk about that maybe next week, depending on what the numbers are. Two more games I want to get to before we wrap up the show. Number one, the Green Bay Packers, beat the Detroit Lions 35-17. Anybody surprised? No. Okay. And they're going to take on the San Francisco 49ers. So the Packers enter this game one win, one loss, 49ers 2-0. All right, Joe, what's your take on this football game? Take a nice deep breath.
I think that I really want to make this comment about the replacements, because I absolutely love that movie. And so, Sorensen, you're in the huddle and the defense with Sorensen, and you say to him, like, what is the thing you're most afraid of? And you think he'd say, like, Lamar Jackson. And no, he goes, bees. I'm afraid of bees on the field. Sorry.
It's all right. Hey, no problem. Hey, if you're drawing reaction from a comment like that, more power to you. All right. That's okay. It's all fun. That's what we're here to do, is have fun and entertain.
Really, it was quicksand. It was quicksand,
Right.
Makes some bad plays. It does. I think that the 49ers are looking really good. And I think that you can't count them out, because similar to what's going on in Baltimore, their rushing attack is great. And it gets to be hard to defend. And then you plop those receptions in there. They're also having problems with health, especially with Trey Sermon might be out, Elijah Mitchell day to day. You'll probably see him. Jeff Wilson's going to be coming back soon, but doesn't matter. That's how Shanahan plays. He just needs running backs. He's got bodies. They all know what to do. They've got a good blocking scheme, and they're just going to pound the rock. So Garoppolo's been looking good. I think that, he comes from New England. He tries not to make mistakes. He doesn't have to play above himself. Trey Lance, he had that problem with his finger, but he was looking great in the preseason. Still think that in the next couple of weeks you might see him, and he'll pretty much be turning the 49ers into that type of Ravens offense, where you have this really mobile, large quarterback that rushes. But I do think about what Mel said earlier on in the episode about some quarterback like coming out of nowhere and going way up the ranks in the draft. And that was Trey Lance, with his high draft capital. So I think that you should be expecting a lot from San Francisco in this game for sure. And they're a team that you're going to want to watch as time goes by. And the Packers, well, I don't know if Aaron Rodgers was rusty in week one, or if he just decided, I don't know, he didn't want to play, or he was upset from years past. I don't know. He looked terrible against the Saints in that week one. And then it kind of hung over. It hung over from the week before into that first half of the game with the Lions. Going into halftime, it was very much like what I think about like in college basketball, where like everybody's neck and neck up until halftime. I even thought to myself, wow, the Lions are really surprising me. They might have a chance to win this game. And then all of a sudden you come out in the second half, and Rodgers must have been like, this is ridiculous. You guys got to get your act together. And I don't know. Aaron Rodgers is amazing. I think that they're going to have trouble with the 49ers. I think that it could be a high scoring game. It definitely over 24s for each team.
Okay, so here, I'll give me a prediction. Is it San Francisco or Green Bay? I don't care about score.
Green Bay.
You're going Green Bay in San Francisco. All right, Mel.
Yeah, I'm gonna take San Francisco. If you really look at it and analyze what happened in week one versus what happened yesterday, it wouldn't surprise me. Aaron Rodgers realizes, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Got one additional game that he's never played before. So he got 17 games versus 16 games. If you look at his demeanor in the first game versus his demeanor in the second game, I wouldn't be surprised if he threw the first game just to prove a point, because he's just that kind of guy. He's real arrogant, cocky, to prove to the Packers how much they really need him. So if I go out there and perform like an average quarterback, this is what you're going to get. But if I go out there and perform like the Aaron Rodgers that I am, then this is what you can expect to see. That one pass that he threw over the middle yesterday, that touchdown pass, that guy wasn't open. That was just an unbelievable throw. The pass that he threw to Devontae Adams, and he just dropped it out of the sky, right? I mean, he didn't have to break stride. There's only one guy that can make that throw, and that's the guy that made that throw. if you really think about it and you look at the game, you go back and look at the first game and you look at yesterday when they played the Lions, I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Rodgers just decided to say, you know what, I'm gonna mail this one in. I'm just gonna let these guys know what they have and how they can expect things to go next year when they decide to put Jordan Love in.
Well, that's an interesting perspective. All right, Steve. All right, so Mel, give me a winner, San Francisco or Green Bay. I think you did.
I did San Francisco right at the beginning.
Okay, no problem. Well,
I think their defense is better. I think their defense is better than Green Bay's defense. I think that's going to be the difference.
Okay, Steve, give me your prediction and your explanation.
Yeah, I like the Niners in this game as well, for all the same reasons these guys just said. I mean, you look at the defense, I think the defense is better. They have that running game. And I just think they're a better football team at this stage of the season than the Packers are. I just think I know Rodgers can put a team on his back. And as we saw the second half the other night or last night, it seems like so long ago now, but I just like the Niners in this game. I think, that team is built. They had a ton of injuries last year, but I think they're going to be a really tough out in the NFC this year. I like San Francisco in this one.
Yeah, and I'll add to this that I like San Francisco and Jimmy Garoppolo. We trust. Okay, but Trey Lance.
All on the Niners.
Yeah, I'm going with 49ers. I believe that Trey Lance will get his turn, but right now, to me, San Francisco is going the smart way they can. Let Garoppolo play as long as he can. He has taken you to a Super Bowl, and don't rush the young guy in. And I believe a lot of teams should have that philosophy. Doesn't always work out that way. So I'm going once again, San Francisco 49ers. Remember, the San Francisco 49ers are not the Detroit Lions, okay? And a lot of people saw that last night. The final game we're going to talk about, I think, is probably the best game of the week anyways. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going into Los Angeles to take on the LA Rams. Okay, Steve, why don't you lead off, give me a prediction, then an explanation.
I like the Rams at home in this one. That defense is really, really good. I think it's going to be a close, low-scoring game. I don't think it's going to be as high-scoring as some of the ones we've seen. I like the Rams in this one. Home cooking.
Yeah, the hat doesn't disagree. Okay, Mel, go ahead. You're all too familiar with the LA area.
So who are the Rams playing?
They're Tampa Bay Bucks.
I'm going with the Bucks.
You are?
I'm going with the
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going with the Bucks. Yeah, I got to go with the Bucks.
What is Kenzo?
I'd like to see something good happen for Matthew Stafford, but I just think that Tampa Bay's playing well. You got two great defenses going against one another, but I still like Tampa Bay.
Okay, Joe.
Also going with Tampa Bay for the same reason I went with the Packers, because their quarterback is going to make it happen when it's down to the line, even if it's a close game. And I think that Brady looks insane. He could probably throw more touchdown passes in his 40s than in his 20s. And you just don't count him out right now. But Stafford is looking exceptional. He's really clicking there. Those breakfasts that he has with Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods should get in on those. And but it's still not going to be enough to be the reigning champs.
All right, well, you know what? I'm going to make sure this is a dead even split. I'm going with the Rams. Not that the hat's probably the most obvious thing on the planet. I just love the change of scenery for Stafford, just like I did with Sam Darnold. And I believe that Stafford's going to have one heck of a year. And the plan is hopefully he'll get rid of a lot of his doubters over the years, because he's finally with a good football team, a well-coached team, great defense, pretty solid running back. So I'm going to go with the Rams as well. So meanwhile, guys, great broadcast tonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to let Joe lead off and let everybody know how they can get a hold of you. Go ahead, Joe.
Hi, you can find me on Twitter at @FF_spotlight. And you can also find me, you can email me on Gmail, fantasyfootballspotlight@gmail.com, all spelled out. And then you can find my analytics articles on ffastronauts.com.
Go ahead, Mel.
You can reach me at email address is melfarjr@gmail.com. All the social media at Mel Farr Jr. And then you can find out what we're doing here in Atlanta and also Detroit for the kids at melfar.org.
And of course, like we titled this broadcast, 4 Men and a Baby, and Kenzo's definitely making his case there and letting everybody know, don't forget about me. All right, Kenzo, I hear you in the background. We love you, little buddy. And for all you young kids and women out there, hey, we bring them all on at all ages, regardless of how young they are. With that said, okay, my esteemed, experienced co-host, Steve Balestrieri, go ahead.
Well, now that we had the baby yelling, now we have the old man yelling. So, yeah, you can find me on Twitter at SteveB7SFG. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. You can email me at Steve at SOFREP. That's the military site that I write for. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me because I'm on that thing constantly. I write at patsfans.com. I do a podcast with them as well. So you can always find me on there and yeah, hit me up.
And as far as we're concerned, you can actually find these broadcasts on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. You can find me on Twitter at Tribune South. That's at Tribune South. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And you can also hear the audio version on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. So there's a lot of different ways that you can hear us talk about football week in and week out. Glad to have these guys as my teammates as always, and we appreciate what they do on social media. More importantly, what I love about Joe, Mel, and Steve, they're good friends and they know an awful lot and they all bring a different perspective of what we try to do. Our goal is to entertain, educate, and inform. So educate and inform while they go hand in hand. And no, we're not going to pretend you're going to win you a lot of money, but my goal is to make sure you're a bit smarter by listening and watching us as well. And don't forget, folks, by the way, to subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel so you can see the visual as well for us as well. So on behalf of Joe Packhem, Mel Farr Jr., and Steve Balestrieri, my name is Scott Morgan, Route the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange, and we will catch you next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.